What's up, guys? Tanner here with Fight for Football. So I'm looking at some posts on Instagram, and there is one by Fantasy Football Trainer, and it was the top 14 most disappointing players of the 2021-2022 NFL season. I'm not going to say I agree with everything on this list, but you also got to remember this is from a fantasy standpoint. And there is a big old B right there. Hopefully it doesn't come and sting me. But number one on that list was Allen Robinson. He was on the Chicago Bears last season. From a fantasy standpoint, yeah, anyone on the Bears is going to be disappointing. For me, that offense is no good. No big surprise there. Allen Robinson has far more talent than he's been producing as. Does that make any sense? But I think we all I think we can all agree that Allen Robinson, from a fantasy standpoint, disappointing. Stay away from him. But he's on the Rams this year, so I would say at least at the most I'd pick him round 3. He's not a wide receiver 1. Next on the list was Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, disappointing fantasy season, yes, for sure. Then it was Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders has not been the workhorse running back / big point. He just has not been what people have expected him to be. Now, he is saying he expects a big season this year, but every player says that. Miles Sanders and the Eagles are just not a run-first team. They always run running back by committee. Basically, ever since they got rid of LaShawn McCoy and Andy Reid, they have just not been one of those teams that relies on their running back. I don't expect anything different this year from Miles Sanders. I would stay away from him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is number 4 on this list. I think he was a first-round pick a couple years ago from the Kansas City Chiefs. Disappointing in fantasy so far, and I expect it to be the same. He's on the Kansas City Chiefs. They've also signed other running backs in the past. While they have Clyde Edwards, they've signed Le'Veon Bell, LaShawn McCoy. They've had Damian Williams, I believe. Not Damian Williams. I forget his name. One of the Williams guys who's on a different team now. But, just in the past several years, these are other running backs that they've had along with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he's just been disappointing from a fantasy standpoint as well. Kenny Golladay. Stay away from Kenny Golladay. He's on the New York Giants, so... anyone on the New York Giants right now, from a fantasy standpoint, is just not worth it. Kenny Golladay was supposed to be a wide receiver 1 there. Just stay away. He was disappointing last season. The whole Giants offense was disappointing. Got rid of Jason Garrett. He was their offensive coordinator. It was just terrible. Absolutely terrible. Trey Sermon, dude, he was expected to come out of Ohio State and just be a freaking tank of a running back. I really did. Honestly, last season, I had big expectations for Trey Sermon. I don't know if he was injured or what, but I don't even think he played. He hardly even played. I don't think he even played at all. I'm not sure how many carries Trey Sermon had, but it was just very, very disappointing from a fantasy standpoint. A lot of people drafted him in the second and third round, maybe even the first. In some leagues, they expected him to be a workhorse guy. It did not turn out that way, and I would stay away from him this season as well. 49ers are one of those teams. They use a trio of running backs, and they always seem to get hurt. And they have some other guy that steps up out of nowhere and does well. So I just don't know about that. Robert Tonyan is number 7 on this list, Packers tight end. Now, he did have a torn ACL last year, so he wasn't really able to perform. But it was a disappointing season overall because he did have a torn ACL. So imagine that. But he's expected to come back, be the tight end 1 in Green Bay this year. Number 8 on the list is Mike Davis, who was with the Atlanta Falcons. Just wasn't really their guy. It was Cordarrelle Patterson, I believe. If I'm pronouncing his name wrong, I apologize. But he was the guy who was the go-to man for the Atlanta Falcons last year. He's the one that made all the plays. He was the dude in Atlanta. He was a fantasy standout, and he was a steal for many people. He was selling waivers when he started blowing up, and people just picked him up. But yeah, number 9, they have Russell Wilson. He was with the Seattle Seahawks last season. From a fantasy standpoint, it's definitely not his most impressive fantasy season. But I want you guys to tell me your thoughts on that down below. I think he's going to do pretty good with the Broncos, though. And number 10, Brandon Ayuk, 49ers wide receiver. Obviously, standout wide receiver was Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk just hasn't been, or Ayuk, if that's how you pronounce it, has not been what they wanted since he's been drafted. He's really going to have to step up. But disappointing fantasy season, yeah, as well. Russell Wilson, disappointing last season. But this season, Russell Wilson, I think he could be one of the top fantasy QBs. I would definitely place him in the top 10. I don't know if I would draft him as my starting, but as a secondary, a guy on the bench who could easily replace a guy on your starting list. I'm not like the biggest fantasy football advisor, okay? I'm not the expert in fantasy football. I love to play it, but I'm not the expert. But these are just my thoughts on these players and their disappointing seasons last year and where they might be heading into this 2022-23 season from a fantasy standpoint. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.